I'm the owner of Busboys and Poets. We are so happy to have Rock Newman and the Rock Newman Show join our tribe here. We are a tribe. This is a place where racial and cultural connections are consciously uplifted, a place where art, culture, and politics intentionally collide. This is a space to take a deliberate pause and feed your mind, body, and soul. We believe by creating such a space, we can actually change our community, change D.C., and change the world for the better. And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Good morning. Today is Saturday, August the 31st, 2013. This is the Rock Newman Show. We are broadcasting live from the Langston Hughes Room at Busboys and Poets, 14th and V Street, Northwest Washington, D.C., where you can come and have your brain, your soul, and your belly just filled up with all kinds of wonderful nourishment. We have a fabulous show lined up for you today. You know, as I think about today's show, I wish that there was a meter that when you walk through the door, you could measure the IQ. because in today's show, it would just blow the roof right off of Busboys and Poets on that IQ meter. We have, as my first guest today, Dr. ASHRAF El-Bayoumi. We'll come back and I'll tell you all about him. And this is a first for us here. A father and son tandem. Dr. ASHRAF El-Bayoumi will be joining us in the first hour, and in the second hour will be Dr. Jehan El-Bayoumi. She is an internist, a professor at George Washington University, the founding director of the RODHAM Institute at George Washington University. And in the last hour, we will play our last role in this term we'll wrap up the 50th year anniversary of the March on Washington with a group of youth from the Southeast Tennis and Learning Center. They will come in character and will perform some of the speeches. You will get a historical perspective from what was 50 years ago, and it will culminate in something that I think you will find very, very fascinating as we put our last touches on the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's March on Washington. Again, thank you for joining us. Call your friends. Tell them that they can view us literally around the world. Anywhere in the world that you can plug up a computer, they can see us at rocknewmanshow.com. And later on this evening on We Act Radio, 1480 AM, there will be a broadcast from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. But let's start by me first welcoming Dr. ASHRAF El-Bayoumi. Thank you so very much for joining the Rock Newman Show.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to talk to you and to your audience this morning.
Okay. Let me tell you, I've instructed the production staff and the technical crew that typically what we do is we go for an hour, 9 to 10. We have a few breaks. I've told them that you are here today to solve the history of the world. And so we might need just an extra segment, an extra 15-minute segment that might be a challenge for you to do in an hour, but in an hour and 15, 16 minutes, we figure you can accomplish that as I look at your background. You know, I intentionally didn't say retired chemistry professor and about 1,000 other impressive ways that we could describe you. I boiled it down to a world citizen, a citizen of the world.
That's true.
And we could start anywhere here. I've looked, and done some research, and I'm not one of those that overly researches because I'm a curious kind of guy, and I'd rather hear it from the source. But given that we could start anywhere, let's start here. You came to America to pursue your education.
PhD.
And you were to finish your education then in terms of, your college career. And you were on your way somewhere through the South. And you saw these water fountains.
Yeah.
and one of them said white, and one of them said colored. And at the time, what did you think that meant?
Well, first, for the audience to appreciate this story, which is real, that was in '56. And before coming, in Egypt, we were bombarded by American propaganda after the Second World War, fancy books and so on. One of them, which was very interesting, called U.S. The Wonder Country. And in it, stories that, they are almost imaginary, like you can fish in a spring and then turn around and cook it in a geyser and eat it. It's Wonderland. So I was young at the time and naive, and I came with that idea. And also I thought that Lincoln liberated the black Americans and so on. And I was riding the train from Jacksonville.
So excuse me one second. You thought the Emancipation Proclamation
Yeah.
was really an emancipation?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
That's what I thought. And I was with another fellow Egyptian who was darker than me and older, very conservative guy, and they put us in the carriage in the train, which it turned out to be for the black Americans. At that time, of course, they didn't say black Americans. Right. They said Negroes and so on. Right. Yeah. And sometimes even worse than that.
Yeah.
And I didn't notice because I was fascinated with being in a foreign environment and looking around so on. My friend told me they put us in this carriage. So I was furious, and my first reaction was to move to another carriage, which I did. My friend tried...
You were furious because you already felt a sense of being discriminated against?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. I mean, obviously, the black Americans, that was the first reaction. The black Americans are looked down upon. I don't want to be looked down upon. But later in months, actually, I discovered the erroneous, how wrong this is. Because when they ask you, are you a Negro? To serve me or not. So that gives him a green card. If I am an Egyptian, then it is all right to do it to the black American. Right. So we became, by default, part of the civil rights movement, by the way.
Okay.
By refusing, by challenging their refusal to provide us with a Coke in the 510 stores and all that. Right. And then I moved to the other carriage, and nothing happened. But when we arrived at the station, we saw the fountains, as you said. And normally I thought that I will push the colored water fountain, and I will get some colored water. I mean, green, blue, red.
I like grape, so it could have been purple.
And then I told my friend, whose name is Abdu, we are in America. You're drinking white water? Come. And in fact, the water was not even cold. And then I saw the sign, white, Negro. And I frankly, my heart sank. But I soon forgot it. And then later, other forms of segregation became obvious. There was a Jewish graduate student by the name of Boardman who invited people from Florida and from Nigeria in his apartment. And the neighbors called the police. The police came and wrecked his apartment, and the guy was fired from the university. Yeah. He was a graduate student in physics, John Boardman. Yeah. And in fact, I admired him for that. And nobody uttered a word at that time. So later, we went to the United Nations Day to speak to black American kids. I get a call from Tallahassee Democrat, your picture is in the colored edition. They said, I didn't know that you have a colored edition. Why I'm getting the black and white? He said, I don't know. Come to the office. I went to the office. Here is a colored edition. And what is exactly the same, except the social section is birthday for black kids and wedding for black people and so on. So it became very clear. Of course, Florida State University at the time was lily white, no blacks except janitors and so on. So we became, I and my wife later became introduced to this big issue, racism based on color. And, but later in years, these issues tied together, you know, the war in Vietnam, from my perspective, the Palestinian issue, colonization, and so on, became all tied together. The victim is the same and the culprit is the same. So we tied, at first we used to look at these issues separately, but by time they, sort of like in physics, unified theory of physics, also unified theory of aggression and domination and victimization of people, whether it is black Americans or Chinese in the United States, or wars waged in Vietnam and Laos and now Afghanistan and Iraq and tomorrow perhaps Syria and so on, or the Palestinian issue where they were robbed of their land in the name of I don't know what. I mean, I sympathize definitely with any ill that come to a person because of his religion, including Jewish people, of course. But I do not condone robbing a nation, robbing a culture by force. And that will not stand, by the way, no matter how long or how much obstacle. So it all became the same. So we became civil rights activists, we became activists against apartheid. You know, in fact, Michigan State University, where I teach, was the first university that divested. And in fact, Mandela quoted that at one time, which is really makes us proud.
You know, whenever, I'll just inject this, because you talk about divestiture and Michigan State being the first university in the country to do such. You know, at the time in the 70s, I was at Howard University, first as a student, and then I went there as a counselor. And to this day, if I'm in a restaurant and a restaurant asks me, would I prefer Pepsi or Coke, which I shouldn't be drinking either, but I always choose Pepsi because Pepsi came out of South Africa long before Coca-Cola did.
Well, we were involved in boycotting grapes. Remember the Chavez, not Chavez of Venezuela, you know, Chavez, the farmer. And we're involved in boycotting Nestle products for the crimes they did in Africa in terms of making people dependent on their product, but when they go to the out of the hospital, they don't have the means, so that it killed many children and so forth. So as I told you from the beginning, we used at the beginning to look at these issues separately, but then suddenly it became the same issue.
Well, obviously there's so much to talk about. We're going to stay another couple of minutes here. We'll go to a break. We'll come back and really start talking about Egypt, past, present, what the future might be, also Syria. But something else that I think happened around the time that you were talking about these issues, this discrimination in the South, was I read a comment that you made that you had to re-educate yourself.
Of course.
To have pride in being an African.
No, the pride of being an African was there, but the dilemma that one first, that I didn't want to be associated with any group that being looked down upon. And that stayed for a while, but the transformation that came and the education, as you said, that came, is that then I am participating in the this ugly phenomena.
Yes.
So quickly, me and my wife became, we never said that I'm not black American. I never said that I'm an Egyptian, so it's all right to do it to the others, you know.
Right.
And because, you know, as Egyptian, we were kind of celebrity, so as if we are pandas in the zoo, you know.
Absolutely.
But later, with the civil rights movement, and we became supporters and participants, of course, we received different reactions. So yes, that is wrong. But it is a natural reaction at first. But I must admit it.
Sure.
That we evolved. That the right to object to being identified as Black American, and in fact, let me tell you, at Michigan State, when I walked in the campus, most blacks gave me the salute, and I was proud of that.
Yes.
You see, that is a transformation. And instead of trying to dissociate myself from Black Americans, that became exactly the opposite. Identify with their problems. When we say Black American, I don't mean all of them, because there are nasty Black Americans who benefited from the civil rights movement at the expense of the others.
Yeah, if I've said the name Clarence Thomas, that I might just who you might be talking about.
I know many other
Folks,
names.
I did say that we're going to, Dr. ASHRAF El-Bayoumi here is going to help us to understand the entire world and all of its problems as we go forth. We're going to come back, and now first, when we get back, we're going to be talking about Egypt, past, present, and see what kind of future we think that Egypt may have and the role it may play in this topsy-turvy, crazy, upside-down world. And after that, we will start to talk about Syria and the imminent threat right now of U.S. intervention in a few moments on The Rock Newman Show.
This is Leprechaun Tim Pohanka from Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai. It's hard to be down on your luck when you're Virginia's first choice for new Nissan and Hyundais, but I need to sell 60 cars this week. Right now, I'll pay you big bucks for your good luck. Bring down any good luck charm you've got, and based on the sale price of the car you choose, I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car this week. Today, your lucky penny is worth plenty, up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car you want. Stop moping and hoping you'll get approved. With my For the People credit approval process, the banks are looking to get lucky and lend to you, even if you've been turned down before. Bring me any good luck charm and I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car today. Hurry, once I get rid of 60 cars, the luck runs out. All offers require bank approval, so call us at 1-800-POHANKA, visit Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai on Route 1 in Fredericksburg, or better yet, log on to TimPohankaForThePeople.com. And when we make a deal, I promise it'll be your lucky day. I'm Tim Pohanka, and I'm a leprechaun for the people.
My baby drives a Pohanka.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the Markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a Pohanka.
And now, The Rock Newman Show.
Hi, folks. We're back Saturday, August the 31st. Can you believe it? We're already at the end of August. In studio with me right now, Dr. ASHRAF El-Bayoumi. He's a retired professor of chemistry from Alexandria University in Egypt and Michigan State. Michigan State. And as I said earlier, a world citizen, someone who has been in the struggle, has been a keen observer and a participant and a commentator on truly all that's going on in the world, much from the Middle East. If we could, in this segment, Dr. El-Bayoumi, your father was one of the founding members of the Muslim Brotherhood. And today there is utter chaos in Egypt. And I found myself last night, earlier this morning, reading and trying to get a grasp. And I felt like the more I read, the less I understood. It is such a complex, complicated situation that if we would go back, I guess, to start this conversation, where obviously the Brotherhood, Muslim Brotherhood, was founded early in the 1900s. 1929. But for the sake of this conversation, and we have to solve this issue in the hour, if we could come up to 1979, and the peace accord, Menachem Begin, Anwar Sadat, Jimmy Carter. First, could you please explain to us what that the essence of that peace accord? What was most important and central that came out of those talks and that handshake?
2 or 3 things. First of all, this Camp David agreement was an agreement between President Sadat and not the Egyptian people. Nobody participated. And you know very well, if you recall, that 3 foreign ministers resigned, foreign ministers that were picked by Anwar Sadat. This agreement is the worst thing that happened to Egypt in modern history. It made Egypt a puppet to the United States and to the Israeli Zionist establishment. And the USAID that people are threatening us with is a curse on the Egyptian people. My wife wrote a piece about 25 years, resourced from AID itself, to the effect of AID on the Egyptian economy and how American intervention in the Egyptian economy has created what Jackson, a former writer in the Washington Post, called the fat cats, and has raised the gap between the poor and the rich in Egypt, and has moved the Egyptian economy from an economy that's trying to produce and to be self-dependent, at least partly, to an economy which is based on importation and many of fringe products and so on. Egypt now, its economy is an economy of a failed state. It depends only on tourism, Suez Canal, and some money comes from abroad. Here, a country which is a central country in Africa and the Arab world, which Nasser tried to develop by developing the high dam and to produce electricity, to make steel and aluminum, and he was on the verge of developing industry based on advanced science when 67 war came. 67 war is to abort any development in Egypt, and that's not the first time. Muhammad Ali, the founder of Farouk's family, even though he is not Egyptian, but his ambitions made him embody the first modern development of Egypt in terms of irrigation, introducing cotton, developing an army, and so on. And the same thing happened. The Allies beat him militarily and forced him to withdraw within the Egyptian border. And the audience should listen to this. And the industry that he developed began to to disintegrate, and schools closed, and tariffs were removed, and the same thing. And scientists during the Muhammad Ali period, as documented in a textbook by a Britisher, were all banned to Sudan and Nuba. Same thing is happening. No, Camp David is not just a military agreement to make Sinai unarmed for the benefit of Israel. It's far more important. The other phase of Camp David is the open door policy, is to ruin the attempt by the Egyptian in earlier period, Nasser period, to develop industry, to do scientific research, and to develop and to participate in the world in terms of scientific development and so on. And comes Sadat, Camp David Agreement, and also in order to get the support, and that will lead to the Muslim Brotherhood, to get the support, he had to quench and to reduce the power of the nationalists and the progressive Egyptians. And guess what? He brought the Muslim Brotherhood to do such thing, and this is well documented. The Muslim Brotherhood was the tool by Sadat to destroy and to weaken nationalists and progressive.
Okay, so we hear
and Mubarak used the same philosophy. You know, Muslim Brotherhood is the other face of the Mubarak regime and Sadat regime. Okay. And here the media are propagating falsehood. It says, well, the Muslim Brotherhood has been oppressed all the time. Of course, they have been imprisoned from time to time, but they were the only political group which has the opportunity to organize and depend, of course, on their own money and capital that they produced while they were in Saudi Arabia, but also from money pouring from the Gulf to support them. And I will give you a quote, and you should read James Petrus, an American professor, who used a very interesting term. The Muslim Brotherhood is used not only by Sadat, not only by Mubarak, but the United States government as a contraceptive. Against nationalist forces and progressive forces, to abort any rise of these forces. That is the game that America is playing. So when they began to deal with so-called political Islam, they brought them for that purpose. But the irony is that some Americans in the State Department warned, said, when you bring so-called moderate Islam, you cannot separate moderate from extreme, Islam. When you bring the so-called moderate Islam who are willing to play your game and who approve Camp David Agreement, who approved market economy, who approved the American policy publicly, you cannot prevent, it is a medium. So you cannot separate the radicals and the terrorists. And the Muslim Brotherhood themselves, they have a radical component. You brought my father into that. My father was a member of the highest organization, but he was not a founding member as such. And he didn't know about the secret wing, Right. Young people like me knew about it, but he didn't know. I mean, he was a high official in government, and he was interested in aspect of the religion which makes people don't lie and be honest and so forth. In the research, but I tell you, my mother used to call Jehan El-Bayoumi, the founder Muslim, whom I met through my father about 6 times, because I'm 78 years old. She used to call him, he is a Rasputin, and he, of course, he used to be mad. But she turned out to be true, because if you read the history of the Muslim Brotherhood, they came about exactly at the time various fascist parties emerged in the world. The Phalangist Party in Spain, the Phalangist Party in Lebanon, the Masr al-Fatah in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Nazi Party, of course, and the Fascist Party of Mussolini. If you look at the Jehan El-Bayoumi, who is the founder of Muslim Brotherhood, he is wearing exactly the same garb like a Nazi brown charter. And the connection between the Muslim Brotherhood and the colonizer from the beginning, they got a 500 pounds, which is a big amount of money in 1930, from the Suez Canal Authority, which is a symbol of colonialism British, to the Muslim Brotherhood to form their first center in Ismailia. But more important, to ask the audience, very briefly, what are the cornerstone of Muslim Brotherhood ideology? First, they don't believe in the nation state. Guess what? That's exactly what the neoconservative also advocate. Weaken the nation states in third world countries. Second, they are for market economy. Guess what? That's exactly what the Americans want. Third, they are against Arab nationalism. Guess what? That's exactly what the American policymaker want to avoid, the rise of another Nasser. And they consider the Palestinian issue not as I consider it a settler colonialism. No, they can consider it just a Jewish group that they can take care of it. And they are anti-Jewish, by the way. I mean, here I am vehemently opposed to Israel, but I am not anti-Jewish. I'm anti-Zionist. In fact, I will fight against people who are anti-Semitic. And because I'm an Arab in Michigan State, some anti-Semites wanted to join us in some demonstration, and we made a public statement against them. We are more against anti-Semites, fascist organization, Americans or otherwise, than even Zionists.
And obviously,
same thing.
You make the big distinction between
much,
Israel and Zionism.
Very much.
Okay, so
even if there is only one Jewish person in the world who is anti-Zionist, we will continue to make that distinction.
Right.
And luckily, there are many, Chomsky and Israel Shahak and Felicia Langer and Leah Zimmel.
Yes. So in simple terms, that was such propagandized, the 1979 peace accord. Was
disaster.
Was a sellout.
Exactly.
What was a sellout by Saddam?
I really don't like to use the word traitor, but frankly, Sadat approaches that. He is a traitor.
What do you think gave rise and was his motivation?
Personal glory. The guy was sick psychologically. Many people are thinking of their legacy, their personal glory. I mean, you have to watch him and the way he dresses and so on. Let me tell you a story I never told.
That's what we like. We like to break ground here on the Rock Newman Show.
my friend who is belongs to the Wafdi party, the liberal party, the real liberal party. By the way, we have to distinguish the liberals of today are neoliberals. They don't talk about independence and sovereignty. They only talk about democracy and so on, because many of them are funded from the National Endowment of Democracy and the likes, But he was belonging to the Wafd party. Actually, the Muslim Brotherhood was created and encouraged. Well, let me not say created. It was at least encouraged by the British colonizer and by Farouk at the early time in order to counter the Wafd party, which is the most popular party at the time. Later, Farouk became against them when they used violence and killed two prime ministers, killed a judge, and made explosions and so on. So what was I?
Sadat.
The story. So this guy was arrested so many times, but at that time, prisons, especially political prisons, were fancy prisons. So this guy, his name, he died, a dear friend of mine, Ibrahim Talat, was in the prison, and then they told him, because he's the oldest person who will dispense for blankets and so on, and mattresses, said, there is a guy who came here who wants 2 mattresses. So with his voice, distinct voice, why does he want 2 mattresses? This is crazy. So give him 2 mattresses. But at night, he climbed in order to look through the window of his room, because it's a fancy prison, to know exactly why Sadat, his name, by the way, Muhammad Anwar Sadat, he told him, what, this guy is crazy. And then he climbed, and then he said, you know what he used the two mattresses for? In order to iron his pants between the mattresses.
Yeah, I understand.
To that extent, Sadat was obsessed by clothing. And you must notice the garb he used in order to walk.
Always.
And the Americans knew, because they have psychological analysts and so on, this is the guy that you should glorify and so on. He walked as if he is a marshal in a huge army, victorious army, and so on. And frankly, there is an aspect of Sadat, because he comes from a poor environment and so on, that I sympathize with. Poverty does very bad things to the psyche of a person. And the guy becomes a president. It gets into your head. And don't underestimate the personal aspect of decisions by leaders. And I told you before, there are many people within his organization, and he picked, that resigned. Camp David agreement will remain with us as the biggest obstacle for development. So that's why we're against it, but to get rid of it is not easy, and it's not simple, but that should be our goal.
Stay tuned. You're going to learn more about this world when we come back in just a few moments on The Rock Newman Show.
This is Leprechaun Tim Pohanka from Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai. It's hard to be down on your luck when you're Virginia's first choice for new Nissan and Hyundais, but I need to sell 60 cars this week. Right now, I'll pay you big bucks for your good luck. Bring down any good luck charm you've got, and based on the sale price of the car you choose, I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car this week. Today, your lucky penny is worth plenty, up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car you want. Stop moping and hoping you'll get approved. With my For the People credit approval process, the banks are looking to get lucky and lend to you, even if you've been turned down before. Bring me any good luck charm and I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car today. Hurry, once I get rid of 60 cars, the luck runs out. All offers require bank approval, so call us at 1-800-POHANKA, visit Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai on Route 1 in Fredericksburg, or better yet, log on to TimPohankaForThePeople.com. And when we make a deal, I promise it'll be your lucky day. I'm Tim Pohanka, and I'm a leprechaun for the people.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Welcome back, folks, to the Rock Newman Show. Today, Saturday, August the 31st, 2013. We are broadcasting live from the Langston Hughes Room at Busboys and Poets, 14th and V Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. My in-studio guest, I am so honored to have Dr. ASHRAF El-Bayoumi. He's a retired professor of chemistry, Alexandria University in Egypt and at Michigan State University. Coming up in our next hour is going to be Dr. El-Bayoumi's daughter, Dr. Jehan El-Bayoumi. She is an internist, a professor, George Washington University, and founding director of the RODHAM Institute. It is an institute and a foundation and a body of work that attempts here in the Washington, D.C. area to be informative, to help give access, equal access to medical care throughout the city. There is much to be talked about with Dr. Jehan El-Bayoumi. And in the 11 o'clock hour, the Southeast Tennyson Learning Center, it is a program that was founded, an organization and an operation, and a facility founded by Cora Masters-Berry, former First Lady of the District of Columbia. And their youth, their students, performed this week at the White House. They did a reenactment of the March on Washington some 50 years ago, and they will be coming here to share that performance, to perform for you, and also to just give some perspective, some historical perspective to some of the people that participated and how it all came about. We left our last segment talking about what Dr. ASHRAF El-Bayoumi refers to as the just borderline insane vanity of Anwar Sadat and the motivation for the so-called peace accord, which in Dr. El-Bayoumi's estimation is perhaps the single largest barrier, has been now for 35 years, to the development and growth and true independence of Egypt.
Because not of the military aspect, because I tie the economic aspect, because the open door policy is part and parcel of the Camp David agreement.
Now, explain what the open door policy is.
Open door policy is submission of Egypt to the market forces, which means for a developing country a complete collapse of any attempt for industrialization and development, and also dependency in agriculture, in education, and also the deterioration of education, because what's the purpose? And scientific research.
So stripping away independence.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, the objective is to abort, or like I said, the contraceptive of any development of Egypt. Egypt is very crucial. People, you told me your wife is fascinated with Egypt. Of course, Egypt is the oldest civilization in the world. When one reads about ancient Egyptian history, even as I am Egyptian, every time get fascinated. Science, the use of chemicals, the invention of various tools like boats that became part of the naval power of Hatshepsut, and also it was a civilization which is humane. Look at the statues with the Pharaoh and his wife and how she is supporting him, and the dwarfs that were not looked down upon, but they were elevated into even power in Egypt. And you know, the builders of the pyramid that some Hollywood tried to say that they were slaves. Look at scientific research shows what kind of food they ate, what kind of meat they ate, what kind of fish they ate. They were special. This is a civilization that Africans participated in. That's why you see black figures in the museum. And so when the black American embodies the ancient civilization, they have the right to do so. They are active participants. I mean, the Ramses and all of these people, they are coming from the south of Egypt. You cannot separate the south of Egypt from Africa.
And let me say two things.
Yeah.
And it might have had a little something to do. One, it might have had a little something to do with the 10 Commandments of Christianity.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing. And, well, if you want to address that, then I'll have another one.
Well, I would like to avoid that because, you know, even Freud suspect even the story about Moses. So,
yeah, okay. All right, so I'll give you a pass on that one. Now, I'm in a taxi going from Midtown Manhattan to LaGuardia Airport. And I see the gentleman's name on the card, and I asked him, "Where are you from?" He said, "I'm from Egypt." So I said, "Hey, my African brother."
Yeah.
He damn near turned that cab over.
Yeah.
I am not African. I am from Egypt. I am Egyptian.
That's a very important point. If you have asked the same taxi driver during Nasser period, he would have welcomed it. Yeah. There is a change, you know.
Tell us about that.
You know, Sadat changed the identity of Egypt. Instead of being an African, instead of being an Arab, it became Egypt. And of course, he wanted to attach himself to the pharaohs without knowing a single line of the history of ancient Egypt. Yeah. Changes the identity. You know, the same thing. The Muslim Brotherhood wanted to change. We are not judging the Muslim Brotherhood after 1 year of rule. Right. That would be unfair. Right. But we judge them because they were steering Egypt into a new identity, into a Wahhabi identity, into a brand of Islam which is known in the deserts in Saudi Arabia and in the Gulf, not Islam which is attached and organically linked to science and to culture and to music and to architecture and to gardens that they have seen in Persia and so on. Islam, when it interacted with Syria, that's being attacked now, and Persia, that's also going to be attacked, they added a component of civilization which was absent in the Arab desert. So the Muslim Brotherhood wanted to change the identity of Egypt, the direction they are taking. It is not unlike Hitler using the ballot box, getting 30% or so, and getting into power, and then abolishes democracy. Right. That's exactly why the Egyptians, even those who support Morsi, began to realize that this organization is a fascist organization and is going to be the last elections, just like Hitler. So that was not an exaggeration. It's remarkable, by the way, how the Egyptian people, by the way, when you speak about Egyptian people, we have to be very clear. I'm not speaking about the so-called intellectual. Many of them are opportunistic, and they change their opinion from time to time. But I'm speaking of the common man, and that brings also the roots of the ancient Egyptian civilization. If you talk to an Egyptian who is not educated, who doesn't know how to read and write, this person is aware of what is happening politically to his country, at least, much more than the equivalent partner in America here. But the situation is reversed when you think of the upper echelon in America. The intellectual in America are far more advanced than their counterpart in Egypt. I mean, people may not like this statement, but that's the truth. So going back, the common person in Egypt is aware. You think that because I don't read and write, I'm a fool? Yeah. No, they have a sense. Yeah. They have knowledge, and that knowledge is deep-rooted in their ancient civilization. And, you know, on that, the Coptic civilization, the Roman civilization, the Greek civilization, the ancient Egyptian civilization, the Islamic civilization. Yeah. We are an old country.
So those individuals who you're talking about who might not have a high degree of education have an understanding. Yeah. So the Muslim Brotherhood gets into office.
They give them a chance.
A day or two, Morsi starts making some decisions that are so dictatorial and autocratic. Is that what so quickly started to
the Muslim
ferment?
Brotherhood, part of their psyche is that they think that God is with them. It is not unlike the ultra-right. It's not unlike the Tea Party people or whatever her name that sees Russia from Alaska.
Yeah, Sarah Palin. Yeah.
Sarah Palin. It's
That's
not
right,
unlike.
right.
They're very similar, ignorant, reactionary, racist, and they hide behind.
And they love guns.
Religion.
And love guns.
And love guns.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same.
Right.
That's the beauty of being bicultural in order to see the similarity.
Yeah.
And it's not an Egyptian phenomenon, it's not an American phenomenon, but it is a phenomenon.
Yes.
So the Muslim Brotherhood has a genius. No one in modern history I have known that lose support in few months. The decision that Mr. Morsi or Dr. Morsi made is to bring a governor in Luxor, which is the center of Egyptian tourism,
right,
that was a member of a group, a terrorist group, that killed 90 people, tourists in Luxor in 1990s. I mean, you can't have more genius than that.
Yeah.
They have a genius that made them lose support from the people who voted for them.
Right.
But
So quickly.
so quick. And mention the media here is immoral.
Yeah.
Is immoral. They speak that how can you be against elected and so on. Okay, let us see. The Constitution. They got a majority. How many people went? 30%. The Constitution was approved by 18% of the electorate. We are speaking about the Constitution, a contract that there has to be a wide consensus. Yeah. Everything. The last council, which is sort of like the House of Senate, the Senate here. You know how 7.5% went to vote for them. And this is a house that a third of it is appointed by Morsi. This is the election. No newspaper mentioned that. Right. And the lies continue. In Syria, they speak about 100,000 people killed. Well, first of all, who wrote the report? Right. Second, do you know what is the breakdown of the 100,000? How many of them are Syrian soldiers? Yeah. Would you be surprised that I tell you 40% of them are Syrian soldiers? But the way they presented that 100,000 killed by Bashar.
You know what?
Bashar comes in the morning and say, where are the children? I want to kill them. Yeah. This is crazy.
Years ago in Boston.
Immoral, immoral.
Years ago,
the media here.
Years ago in Boston, I heard Jesse Jackson give a speech, and I was fascinated by what he said about how the media has appraisal power. In other words, if a jeweler looks at your ring, you give your wife a ring and say that's a $100,000 ring, and she goes into a corrupt jeweler, and he looks at it and he'll say that ring ain't but worth $100. It's not worth $100,000. You feel how you feel being appraised that way. So the media has appraisal power. Now, you're saying that they're immoral and they tell this story, and I want to ask you...
The media can convince you and convince, not necessarily you, many people that I am Elizabeth Taylor, that I am Marilyn Monroe. The power of the media, even for very educated people, should not be underestimated. The media is more important than the military in forming opinion.
Yes. And what I want to ask you, we've got 2 minutes before we go to our next break. What is the motivation of the media to tell this story in such an improper way?
Excellent. Who is the media? What do they represent? These Walter Cronkite and Rather and all, these are part of the establishment. They dine together, they sleep together sometimes. They are part of the establishment. They don't need a censor to tell them do that and do that. They have the interest. They are part and parcel of the ruling power in the United States. So the question then, what does the ruling power want? What does America, not the people, America, the establishment, the Pentagon, NASA. By the way, I like to thank NASA for recording this. Maybe they will send me a copy.
right.
And the groups who, in K Street who study and
the lobbyists.
Lobbyists and all of that. So, but the people in the United States, the Congress represent the American people? I mean, this is a joke. When you have to have $1 million in order to run for Congress and $100 million to run for a Senate and $1 billion to be a president, is that democracy? Hell with that democracy. Damn that democracy. This is not democracy. This is plutocracy. This does not represent the will of the people. Of course, in some little places like towns and so on, you can see aspects of democracy when people know each other. Yeah. But we, I'm quoting Sandra Day O'Connor, the former Supreme Court judge. Absolutely. This country is approaching dictatorship. Yes. And lately, Carter even said similar thing. This is not the democracy. And the democracy they want to import, we hate it. We don't want it. And also the USAID, we don't want it. I hope the Congress passes a resolution tomorrow to abolish the U.S. The U.S. aid to Egypt benefit the establishment here. It does not help the Egyptian people. It ruins the future and the economy of Egypt. We don't want it.
The truth is the light, and on the Rock Newman Show, it'll set you free. We'll be back in just a few moments.
My baby drives a bull handcuff.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the Markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a bull handcuff.
this is Leprechaun Tim Pohanka from Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai. It's hard to be down on your luck when you're Virginia's first choice for new Nissan and Hyundais, but I need to sell 60 cars this week. Right now, I'll pay you big bucks for your good luck. Bring down any good luck charm you've got, and based on the sale price of the car you choose, I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car this week. Today, your lucky penny is worth plenty, up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car you want. Stop moping and hoping you'll get approved. With my For the People credit approval process, the banks are looking to get lucky and lend to you, even if you've been turned down before. Bring me any good luck charm and I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car today. Hurry, once I get rid of 60 cars, the luck runs out. All offers require bank approval, so call us at 1-800-POHANKA, visit Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai on Route 1 in Fredericksburg, or better yet, log on to TimPohankaForThePeople.com. And when we make a deal, I promise it'll be your lucky day. I'm Tim Pohanka, and I'm a leprechaun for the people.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Welcome back, folks. This is Rock Newman. In studio with me, our guest in the Langston Hughes room at Busboys and Poets, 14th and V Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. Come on down. We've got 2 more hours of riveting conversation. Join us here. You are more than welcome. Tell all your friends to watch us around the world at rocknewmanshow.com and 1480 AM. WPWC, We Act Radio will be broadcasting tonight from 6 to 9 p.m. We'll be doing a rebroadcast. In studio with me, Dr. ASHRAF El-Bayoumi. Coming up next, his daughter, Dr. Jehan El-Bayoumi, and then the youth from the Southeast Tennis and Learning Center who performed at the White House this week. Their rendition of the 50th anniversary of the march, commemorating the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington from 1963. The United States sits today, as we speak right now, 10:01 a.m., Saturday, August the 31st, hours or perhaps days away from another incursion, away from another attack on a sovereign country. We have had, over the past couple of decades, one military disaster after another. We could enumerate them. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya. It seems as if everything that this government, the United States government, every time they've gone into a country, it appears as if things have gotten much worse than much better. And a couple of weeks ago, I saw a report about the billions of dollars that were spent in Iraq on reconstruction. Billions of dollars. And no reconstruction was done. Now our sights are set. John Kerry, Secretary of State, lays out a plan about the knowledge, what they call the perfect knowledge of the use of weapons of mass destruction, nerve gas, and the rest. President Obama starts to try to explain why the U.S. must do something to spank the Assad regime. There seems to be a total confusion. It seems to be, it is such confusion about what should be done, why it is schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Absolute schizophrenia as it relates to Syria.
You get that impression, especially when you read the New York Times today, even the New York Times today. But let me address the audience. You know, you are being fooled by various techniques. You are told that this is done in the national interest of the United States. Stop and think about what does national interest mean. Does it mean more students will be able to go to the universities? Does it mean more housing for the poor or even the middle class? Does it mean better health care? Does it mean that people will find more decent jobs? Or exactly the opposite? Well, let us see. as a scientist, I judge things by facts.
Yeah.
Well, did Vietnam or Laos, what did it bring to the American people? How did it serve the national interest of America? By the way, I define the national interest of America, not the interest of the big corporation that produces tanks and air drones and phosphorus bombs and chemicals to provide to Iraq to make gas, chemical weapon-grade gas. No, I'm speaking the national interest of the millions of American people. Tell me how many students benefited, how many women benefited, how many jobs have been created, how many housing has been made available. Tell me how the dire health condition for the poor of Americans have served. This is the national interest. So think first, what is the national interest of America? Second, when a situation is put to you in a very complex way, and then you say, well, it's complicated, that gives you an escape route. It is done purposely. It is not very complicated. You have to ask, what are the goals of America towards Syria? I tell you, it is April 23rd, 2003, in the Time magazine, with big figures. Syria, next stop. Long before Der'a, long before Laziqiyya, long before chemical attacks, long before that. Read what the former foreign minister of France, Dumas, who's saying that people approach him years before this chemical war fiasco. Third technique. If you think of an issue, chemical attack, in an isolated way, as if it is in vacuum, you're going to ring, you are going to reach wrong conclusion, and you will be a victim of the media. You have to ask the bigger question. Why are we against Bashar al-Assad? How true the claims that Bashar is killing his own people? And like even Thomas Friedman asked in a couple of months ago, why is he still in power? Why do the Syrian people support him? Why Saudi Arabia is against him? Why Erdogan is against him? And ask these questions, you find the truth. Another advice. In science, by the way, science is logic. Scientific methodology is just simple logic. If you early man takes a stone and hit a child and he dies, you say, yeah, the stone, it kills people. You avoid it. So it's just simple logic. So you just ask the right questions, you approach the truth. I wouldn't say the absolute truth. You approach. I'm not saying that the Syrian government, and I say this in Damascus, by the way, for many years, is correct on every aspect. Even Bashar al-Assad admits mistakes in relation to democracy and the security apparatus he inherited and so on. But these are not the reason why the United States is against the Syrian government and the Syrian people. The Syrian government is refusing a peace deal or a capitulation deal with Israel. It refuses to submit to the dictates of the United States and follow market economy. They refuse to dissociate themselves from Iran and Hezbollah. Hezbollah is not a terrorist organization. It is the greatest thing that happened in the Arab world. And I'm not a Shiite, by the way, which is another technique to subdivide the Arab world, Shiite and Sunnis. You know, these are the core reasons. So if you follow the United States policy, even before Obama, you will find the truth. It's not a mystery. And in science, by the way, when you find things that does not fit together, the theory is wrong. The assumptions are wrong. America is not for peace in the third world countries, is not for prosperity. It is to rob these people, to exploit these people, to dominate. these people. That's why we are against American policy. By the way, this is the best advice to the American. I love American people. Some people say, well, you hate America. No, no, no. Don't play that game. I hate American government that exploit American people, that use American people as fodder. Remember the Agent Orange that we said all along it will cause cancer? Finally, reports admit. Remember the Gulf Syndrome? Finally. Remember depleted uranium that affect American soldiers, of course, and the Iraqi soldiers? Remember did America lie or not? Yes, America lied. Okay, why would they suddenly say the truth now? Did they tell you that Saddam was pulling children from the incubators? It turned out a company, a medium company, Knowlton, hired by Kuwait, did that. Tell you about weapons of mass destruction in the test tube of Obama? Lies. They tell you about the chemical attack in Iraq. Who provided the precursors of these chemicals? It is the United States government. Read. Also, by the way, of course, not everybody has the time to read and investigate. That's why the value of a program like that. It is our duty to inform the public about what we read. So if there are contradictions, maybe the assumptions are wrong.
And on that point, I want to say to my viewers and to my listeners, if you reduce what Dr. El-Bayoumi just said to this simple explanation, this simple set of questions, often whether it was Iraq or Afghanistan or Libya, it is said we are doing what we're doing. The government of the United States of America saying we're doing what we're doing, and the first thing they have to put up to try to get support is to say we're doing this for our national interest.
Lie.
His question: have any of those incursions, any of those invasions, any of those wars helped with education, helped with the poor, helped with jobs, helped with health care,
infrastructure,
helped
bridges,
with
roads,
infrastructure? Have any of those things improved as a result of this folly into these foreign lands? The answer to the question is no. Now, have corporations made billions and billions and billions of dollars of, guess what? Not anybody else's money except yours and mine.
A third question, a follow-up question, just imagine that this money was invested in schools, in house, in health, in infrastructure. I think you would be happier.
Okay, now, so the White House, the administration, and Congress, they would all say, but what would be fermenting in that part of the world would be an uprising that ultimately would threaten the peace and freedom of the United States.
This is what finally I like the report in New York Times, although I know that this paper is very sneaky paper, but it said that.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to calculate all the repercussion, negative and positive. If Obama goes and attack, even if a limited strike, I tell you one thing. In Egypt, now the support is for Bashar al-Assad. A big shift because Egyptians were bombarded with the Jazeera and so on. Egypt is, the United States government is already losing. It's already losing if you consider all the factors. And this limited strike. Okay, suppose Hezbollah will send a rocket into Israel. Will Israel respond or not? It will respond. Then what? You cannot control a situation. There is no such thing as limited. But if Obama retract, he will lose politically. But that is the honorable thing to do.
Right. That's legal.
That's the honorable thing to do. I actually was talking in front of the White House and addressing Mr. Obama, the Nobel Prize winner for peace, for heaven's sake. But I must say, regardless of any personality that entered the White House, once you enter that White House, you become as if you are a new field dictating the policies and the priorities which represent the real power in the United States. The real power in the United States are not the people. It is the secret agencies, it is the military organizations, it is the billionaires, it is the big corporation. That's not rhetoric, that's reality. Yeah. The American people is the weakest partner in this country. Now, when the American people, who, by the way, are against the war, speaking of democracy, what is democracy? Democracy is to reflect the will of the people, to reflect the will of people. Isn't that so-called founding fathers and so on? Some of them were screwing with America, with black Americans while condemning that. You know, you have to
tell
find
the truth and shame the devil.
You have to find the truth. No, here is a picture. I want to show you a picture. Brzezinski with this. Who is this handsome young man? There. Is it the television?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that. Look at that. Look at that. Brzezinski with this young man. Who's this young man? That's Bin Laden. I'm asking you, did Obama mention the atrocities of Jabhat al-Nusra in his speech or in his discussion on PBS a couple of days ago? No. Jabhat al-Nusra, as Dennis Kucinich said, it seems they hired the U.S. Air Force as their partner. The American government condemns Jabhat al-Nusra as a terrorist organization, but it is an allied to Jabhat al-Nusra. It's allied. It's using Jabhat al-Nusra to do its dirty work. This policy never worked, and it hurt the American people, and it hurt the American citizens.
And what we attempt to do here on the Rock Newman Show is to help the American people and to help the world. Try to save the world one conversation at a time. Dr. ASHRAF El-Bayoumi, this has been absolutely fascinating. And
I didn't know it was television.
Yeah, it's live streaming all around the world.
I would have dressed.
You look pretty. Don't worry about it. I want to say to you, we want to have you back more than one more time.
And I was looking there. I should have looked there.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Okay. Thank you so much. Be right back with Dr. Jehan El-Bayoumi on the Rock Newman Show.
this is Leprechaun Tim Pohanka from Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai. It's hard to be down on your luck when you're Virginia's first choice for new Nissan and Hyundais, but I need to sell 60 cars this week. Right now, I'll pay you big bucks for your good luck. Bring down any good luck charm you've got, and based on the sale price of the car you choose, I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car this week. Today, your lucky penny is worth plenty, up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car you want. Stop moping and hoping you'll get approved. With my For the People credit approval process, the banks are looking to get lucky and lend to you, even if you've been turned down before. Bring me any good luck charm and I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car today. Hurry, once I get rid of 60 cars, the luck runs out. All offers require bank approval, so call us at 1-800-POHANKA, visit Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai on Route 1 in Fredericksburg, or better yet, log on to timpohankaforthepeople.com. And when we make a deal, I promise it'll be your lucky day. I'm Tim Pohanka, and I'm a leprechaun for the people.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Folks, welcome back to the Rock Newman Show. We're at the Langston Hughes Room at Busboys and Poets, broadcasting live. In studio with me now, we want to talk primarily in this segment about Washington, D.C. healthcare. And it stands to reason that you could extrapolate that Washington, D.C. healthcare is a microcosm of healthcare, the concerns, the issues, the challenges, the benefits, literally throughout the country. And Dr. Jehan El-Bayoumi is a professor, is an internist at George Washington University. She is world-renowned. She has treated some of the top individuals in the world. She has been the family doctor, interestingly enough, for politicians from both sides of the aisle. And when I say politicians, I'm not just talking about low-ranking folks. I'm talking about presidents and vice presidents and secretaries of defense and on and on and on. Her practice, her professionalism is something that those in the greatest of power, it has allowed those in the greatest of power to trust her to put themselves in her care for their physical well-being. She is the founding director of the RODHAM Institute, which is named after Hillary Clinton's mother. And Dr. El-Bayoumi has been the family doctor for the Clintons, and now let's go right over the other side of the aisle, for Dick Cheney. And there is something to be said just about that. In this town that has become so incredibly divided, that there is an individual that these power brokers trust, no matter which side of the aisle, says something for that individual's competence and professionalism. Dr. El-Bayoumi, welcome to the Rock Newman Show.
Thank you. Good morning.
God bless you, and it's great to have you.
It's my pleasure, Rock. First of all, let me just say a disclaimer. It's not about me being so wonderful and taking care of both sides of the aisle. Any professional, any clinician takes care of all VIPs, whether they're homeless or whether they are president of any country or, foreign state. So I appreciate the compliments, but really this is the oath that I took as a professional and as a physician, and I dare say that all my colleagues, especially at GW, take care of people on both sides of the aisle, and the politics, and I have strongly held views, are separate than the care that we have. When we're one-on-one in that room, I don't care what your politics are, you are the human being that I, as the physician, takes care of.
And that sounds very much like I had Dr. Ben Carson on. And we all know the world-renowned Ben Carson. And he said something similar, man. When he opens it up, all the rest of that superficial crap just goes out the window. And, in fairness, it should be said that I just talked about names that people would recognize.
Sure.
But those unnamed and those without a voice, it has also been demonstrated by your commitment to them, sort of the humanity that you bring to your profession. And the fact that you are applauded and honored has much to do with that particular humanity. So,
well, thank you. And I would say this, that there are a lot of other people like me in this city, good people, good organizations. And since you introduced the RODHAM Institute, that's actually one of the main goals of the RODHAM Institute. We are much stronger together than we are apart. And one of the missions and part of the vision and the goal of the Institute is to work together synergistically, cover each other's weaknesses so we can uplift everybody. And let me tell you a little bit about Mrs. Dorothy Rodham, who was my patient. She died.
Dorothy Rodham, Hillary Clinton's mom.
Right.
Yes.
She was. She died November 1st, 2011, at the age of 92 and a half. And I'm not outing her in any way when I tell this story, she came from a difficult circumstance. She was extremely bright, and in a different circumstance, she would have been a doctor. She loved learning and education, and indeed, when she had the opportunity, she audited classes at the University of Arkansas, where her son-in-law was governor. And she had a commitment to social justice, and not in words only, but indeed. When she would come to see me as a patient, she would sit in the waiting room just like anybody else, polite, kind, talk to everybody, down to earth. And so to honor her and to honor her legacy, it was important to me, especially being of Egyptian heritage. You know, you want to honor your ancestors.
Absolutely.
How you remember people is very important. I wanted to do something that would bring her commitment to social justice and her love of medicine and healthcare together. So the RODHAM Institute is an action-oriented institute to reduce health disparities, not overseas, not in exotic Africa, but right here in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
Because although I was born in Florida, raised in Michigan, I've been in Washington, D.C. now. I'm about to start my 29th year here. I chose Washington, D.C.
Your 29th year, so you came here really as a baby.
Something like that. I chose to come to D.C. I fell in love with it. I knew and I fell in love with Chocolate City. And what struck me, taking care of people in those high positions, as you mentioned, is the lack of knowledge, the lack of commitment to making a change. People were coming through, especially at the federal government level, coming through here, enjoying the generosity of Washingtonians, but there was no reciprocity. So it was really important to me to, when you love something, you want to serve it. Yeah. I want to serve Washington, D.C. And as a doctor, the best way that I could think of serving it is to be part of the solution of reducing the Great Divide. Because let me quote some statistics for you, and you will be shocked.
Yeah.
We are really, you might not be so shocked, we are really a tale of two cities.
Yes.
East of the river, we have the same rates of HIV that any developing country in Africa has. DC is number one in a number of areas and not in good ways. Number one HIV per capita in the country. Number one cancer death per capita in the country. Number one end-stage renal disease.
And what kind of disease?
End-stage renal disease, people with kidney failure in the country. And yet, we are in the capital of the richest country in the world. Yeah. That is an embarrassment.
That's the seat of power.
That is an embarrassment.
Yeah.
That is a shame.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the mid-1990s, did you know that our infant mortality rate right here in D.C. was the same as Haiti's?
No, I did not know that, and that is shocking when you just think about it, when you juxtapose one against the other.
And you know, we just...
The poorest country in this hemisphere, and the richest countries in this hemisphere, the same rate of infant mortality.
So, you know, in the previous hour, my dad spoke about sort of world issues in terms of politics, in terms of money. It is as a result of the prison industrial complex, of the war machine, of the what I call uber capitalism, not regular capitalism, where if you were Henry Ford and you worked for his company back in the day, you as the assembly line worker could afford the car. No, I'm talking about something way beyond that. I'm talking about...
Uber as in obscene. Yeah.
I'm talking about at the end of Clinton's presidency, Bill, that is, the difference between an entry-level worker and a CEO was 40-fold, which was about what Western Europe was, 2030. At the end of the Bush presidency, it was 400-fold. That's what I call uber capitalism.
Yeah, yes.
And health is just a manifestation of poverty. We're talking about poverty. I want to just say, in commemoration of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s 50-year anniversary of I Have a Dream speech, what gets left out in the discourse and the discussion, he was anti-war. He was anti-poverty. He did not look at equality as just simply being a superficial. He had a greater vision of a holistic equality.
And so far from just being a dreamer, but a very real activist, a very real proactive organizer to help bring effect and change to those issues that concerned him.
So one of the things that in medicine, as in many other fields, we learn is that if you're going to solve a problem, you can't just take a piece here and take a piece there and take a third piece here. Sometimes, if you're going to have true lasting change that's long-term, you have to address all the problems simultaneously. So until and unless we address poverty, healthcare will not be solved. Unless we talk about economic equality, then racism will not be erased. As long as we talk, we don't address corporate greed. And by the way, the fastest growing corporation group industry is what? The prison industrial complex.
Prison industrial complex, yes.
So these issues may seem disparate, but especially as a general internist, you know, I don't just focus on the eye or the arm or whatever. You talk about the whole organism, the whole human being. So we are living at a time in human beings' development where we are all connected. And so if we preach war, if we behave in warlike ways, if we feed our kids video games that talk about war and we send young people to create war, what it is a boomerang. Right. Look at all the school shootings that are happening.
Yes.
This kid down in, where is it, North Carolina, Georgia, Decatur, Georgia, he said, nobody loves me. And it took a black woman to talk him down.
Yeah.
So these may seem like, what is she talking about? She's talking about health care, but it's all linked.
Yes. So let me ask you, so much to ask. Would you, with all that you do, you have people's sort of lives in your hand. Would you give us a day in the life of Dr. Jehan El-Bayoumi? Would you just kind of walk us through a typical day, if such thing exists?
Sure. First of all, I love seeing patients, and I guess this speaks to sort of my bicultural background. Before I talk about the typical day, I want to tell you a story about my grandmother, my dad's mom.
Okay.
My dad's mom didn't have a huge formal education. Not because her parents didn't want her to, I found out, but because she wanted to hang out with her aunts that had a lot of fun. Was probably one of the smartest human beings that I ever knew. And through her father, learned a lot about medicine and folk medicine, but she was a true healer. And I will never forget when my sister, we would go back and forth between here and Egypt in the summertime, came down with hepatitis A. And, we were away from my parents, and she was, teenager, scared, not feeling very well. So my grandmother took out a newspaper and cut a newspaper in the shape of a paper doll. And she asked my sister, "Who did you see today?" And my sister named everybody, and for every name, she punctured a hole in the paper doll. And she said, "Okay, is that everybody?" She said, "Yes." She lit a match to it, circled my sister's bed 7 times, and my sister happened to fall asleep. And then we stepped out, and I said, "Gatito, do you really believe in that stuff?" She says, "It doesn't matter what I believe, it's what she believes." And she's better, isn't she?
Yeah.
So healing is something that anybody and everybody can have. Conversely, just because you're a doctor or any clinician doesn't mean that you're a healer.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's not an individual sport, it's a team sport. So when I go in the morning,
Okay, tell you what.
Tell me.
We came up to the clock.
Okay.
We're gonna take this break and come back and find out about that typical day and more
Okay.
about the RODHAM Institute and all that Dr. El-Bayoumi does.
My
On the
pleasure.
Rock Newman Show at Busboys and Poets.
My baby drives a bull handcuff.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a bull handcuff.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Welcome back, folks. Today is Saturday, August the 31st, 2013, and we're broadcasting live from the Langston Hughes Room at Busboys and Poets. My guest, Dr. Jehan El-Bayoumi, founding director of the RODHAM Institute, internist and professor at George Washington University. And before we were forced to go to break by the clock, you were getting ready to give us an example of the day in the life of.
Okay. Well, the first thing is when I see my colleagues and staff at GW, there are a lot of hugs and shout-outs and smiles, because I think that if you're going to be seeing patients in clinic, you have to create an atmosphere which is a healing atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And when people come to see me in the clinic, they're coming to my house.
Yes.
And making sure that they are comfortable, that they're not scared. You know, when you're sick, you're scared. And even if you're not scared per se, you may have the memories of having, like you go to the, some people are afraid of going to the dentist. Sure. A lot of people are afraid of going to the doctors. So we try to create an atmosphere that is comfortable. And so I see patients, and I really try to get to know them as individuals, because unless I understand the context of them as individuals, how am I going to be able to be helpful to them? Right. So I learn about their families, what do they do for a living, what kind of stress they're going under or going through. And you mentioned it before the break that I have the lives of people in my hands, but that's a big responsibility. Yeah. And so it's important that we create a partnership so that it's not such a big burden on me. I'm a human being after all. Sure. So to give permission to the people that I'm caring for and saying, look, you tell me, does this sound right to you? Did I miss anything? And sometimes people say, you forgot X, Y, and Z. And I'll thank you for reminding me. Sure. And it's not just about the people that are in that room, me and the patient. It is about the nurse, the person greeting the patient at the front desk, the pharmacist that I work with. So the nice thing about where I work is that I love the human beings that I work with. Mm-hmm. I also teach, and I teach medical students, I teach residents. I work in the hospital as well, and that's where I really get to see the ugly side, the ugly face of the lack of health care and access to good health care. Because you see people who are down and out on their luck and end up being on the streets, who end up dying early. And they use alcohol, they use tobacco, they use drugs, sometimes they use sex as a way of self-soothing from the pain that they are going through. And so when they seek treatment, they're oftentimes at delayed stages in their illness. And the repercussions of what their illness has done on the overall family is really tough. So my day, there is really no typical day, because I do a little bit of everything. And of course now with the RODHAM Institute, I'm having the great fortune of meeting a lot of good folks all around the city so that we can work on issues that will hopefully make a dent and at least move the needle in terms of reducing disparities.
Okay. So you obviously, as a doctor, you treat patients. You treat patients in a hospital. They come to see you there. You build that bond with them. You really have taken on something now as the founding director of the RODHAM Institute, where you're going beyond just your isolated relationship with a patient. I think it will probably go without saying, you still treat one patient at a time. I understand that. Mm-hmm. But you're doing something. You've taken on a responsibility now. You have a mission and an initiative that is to improve the overall care and access to care of the city of Washington, D.C., across the entire city. How do you go about doing that? What are some of the things that the Institute is doing to make that happen?
Sure. Well, I think I should back up and tell you about what I've learned through being a teacher of students and residents, medical students and residents, I noticed that when a first-year medical student gets into medical school, they're going into medicine for all the right reasons. They want to serve people. They've often done community work. They are excited. And then all of a sudden, they go through the process of medical school and residency training. And that person, the same individual who started off, sometimes is unrecognizable. They serve to objectify people. They refer to patients rather than as people. They'll refer to them as their disease, not their name. So I began to reflect, why is that? What is it about the system? And when we talk about the system as an academician, that's us.
Yes.
What is the culture, what is the message that we've given that allows them to feel that it's okay to behave in that way? So I began to reflect, and I said, poor people, especially in urban academic medical centers in the hospital, trust us with their lives. It's an honor to be able to take care of another human being. And yet what do? We turn around and we objectify them, and when we even do work outside of the hospital, it's charity. Well, I want to say, and I want to make an argument, that it is an obligation that we have not fulfilled and that we have not reciprocated to the people of Washington, D.C. that have entrusted us with their lives when in their hospital.
Yeah.
So then, what do we need to do? How do we change the educational system in the medical setting to inculcate social accountability, social responsibility? Because we have people that start off that way.
Yes.
So what do we do to nurture and support that? So one of the focuses, there are probably four. One of the spheres that we're really working on is how do we train clinicians? And by clinicians, I don't mean just doctors, because nurses, community health workers, physician's assistants, nurse practitioners, physical therapists, it's everybody, right?
Anesthesiologists.
Right, everybody. How do we train them in a way that, first of all, they can work as a team together, okay, but also to inculcate that sense of social responsibility? So we began to, with actually the Southeast Tennyson Learning Center under the guidance of Ms. Cora Masters-Berry, look at her program as a model where education of kids through sports is a way to uplift them.
Yeah.
So we began to look at the education and look at the whole workforce of getting kids into health professions. So starting with elementary school, middle school, high school, the RODHAM Institute is focused on educating in STEM H, science, technology, engineering, math, and H with a capital H, healthcare. So we're doing programs with kids from the Southeast Tennyson Learning Center, Ballou, Coolidge, to educate them on these fields so that as a pipeline, when we're talking about healthcare careers, whether it's nursing or medicine or PA, et cetera, we're getting more minority kids into that pipeline. And then when they're doing their training as clinicians, what do? We say, okay, you medical student or you nursing student, you're going to serve as mentors for these kids.
As what? As
mentors.
As mentors,
So for example, in July 20th, we had a summer enrichment program where the kids that I mentioned from those schools attended, also people from PG County with their parents. We had, think about this, Rock, 18, all African-American except one lovely white woman, 18 mentors standing in front of a group of bright-eyed, beautiful kids and their parents, 125 people. I'm a pediatric surgeon. I'm a mathematician. I'm an engineer. How powerful was that?
Yes.
And you want me to tell you it was really powerful? It wasn't just for the kids or the parents, for the mentors themselves.
Yes.
That's how you stay connected.
Yeah.
That's how you stay connected. So building the academic community bridge that is bi-directional. So education is key to the RODHAM Institute.
Right.
That's one thing. But it is not just about an individual sport. It is not the cult of personality of Jehan El-Bayoumi creating this. It is bringing together excellent organizations. Southeast Tennyson Learning Center, work that's being done by other people at GW at Eastern High School.
Yeah.
Coolidge High School Alumni Association, the Association of Black Cardiologists who provided the curriculum for us to use to teach kids through this health education leadership program, another program where high school kids for 4 weeks, once a week, they come to GW, and our residents and medical students teach them about nutrition, tobacco cessation, exercise, and the residents and students put on the workout outfits with the kids.
Yes, yes. Are you getting, are you interfacing with government, with D.C. government?
Absolutely, absolutely. So June 8th, we had an introduction and an initiation of a community dialogue with the, I hate to use the word stakeholders, it sounds so corporate, but interested parties.
Sure.
We had D.C. council members. We had Dr. Christensen, the head of the Black Caucus and Tri-Caucus of Congress, who is the head of the health section, who happens to be an MD alumnus from GW. We had Department of Health folks, Unity Health, Amera Health, Whitman Walker, the high schools that I mentioned, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, other people from the community, of course our School of Public Health, Nursing, PA, NP, Medical School, all of that. And we had a 3-hour dialogue where the people there, it was an invited summit, about 85, 90 people, where they told us what the priorities are. And the 2 priorities, education, makes sense, but food issues came up as something important. So we've been working with the different organizations, Wholesome Wave, I'll tell you about in a second, Food and Friends, DC Greens, folks from the Department of Health. And, you know, there's been a recent change in the person who's in charge of the Department of Health, but we're continuing to work with them that are not only working with us, but teaching us. There's a mutual education that's happening. We, the RODHAM Institute, are going to provide the academic support. So if they want to evaluate their programs, we're here. But they're the ones with the experience, and they have the experience of telling us what works, what doesn't work. We've met with Bibi Otero, Yvette Alexander, Joyce Clement Smith of Marion Barry's office. So we're looking to the wisdom of the community. And you know, everything old is new again. We know how to take care of ourselves. We've just forgotten.
Yeah.
We just need to remember again.
This is such an incredibly, everything I read about it and everything I heard about it is just such a noble thing that's being undertaken. For a train like this to kind of go all through the community, you know, it takes, maybe I should have said car, because what I want to say, it takes gas to put in the tank. How is this funded?
So the reason that I wanted to have it at an academic institute is because there are lots of costs that we don't have to worry about. I don't have to worry about office space or computers or HR or malpractice, right? The university, the institution, is putting some in-kind support. So part of my salary is being supported. We have a grant from Geiger Gibson, another wonderful granting foundation that supported some of the administrative help. The Secretary of State herself has given a gift. But frankly, when she was giving the gift, I said, don't give us too much money, because this has to be about in-kind participation, and money corrupts. So we've got a modest budget. We don't even have enough money to hire an executive director right now, but hopefully we will in the future. But people are giving of their time, people from the School of Public Health, ABC, for example, Association of Black Cardiologists. I really want to give them a shout out. Because they are an incredible organization. They, along with the National NIH's Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, created a comprehensive 20 or 12 module curriculum about heart health that's specifically for the African American community. Okay? Guess what? It was sitting in warehouses. So they said, hey, we'll give you this curriculum for free. It's already been done. So that's what I mean about in-kind. It's not always about the money. It's about and resources. So the Smithsonian Institute, We've got wonderful internship programs, but kids from east of the river don't necessarily know about it. They're going to create a RODHAM Institute program so that kids can do internships, and even some of them get paid with stipends that will help, allow them to get exposure to things that are right here in the District of Columbia.
We are talking with Dr. El-Bayoumi on the Rock Newman Show from Busboys and Poets in the Langston Hughes Room. I want to let my staff know that we're going to keep this conversation going. This is about healthcare. It's about D.C. healthcare, and I want to sort of really stay with this. I want to ask you, Dr. El-Bayoumi, you bring out a statistic, and all of the statistics that you brought out were, if not alarming, not so much alarming because we are aware of them, but horrific. Here in the nation's capital, we per capita have the #1 rate of incidence of AIDS. How do we change that?
So there is a good news part of this in terms of that statistic, in that, 15, 20 years ago, and by the way, having done my residency training here beginning in 1985, I witnessed firsthand what the AIDS epidemic looked like, and let me tell you, it was not a pretty picture. It was horrible. And I actually was in the rooms of several, it used to be mostly gay men, who died estranged from their families. I was the only one in there with them. So it was horrible. And
estranged from their families, because especially at that time, there was a stigma associated which literally made you a pariah. It was leprosy.
Exactly. And what has happened, the good news, is that because of social activism, because of commitment by fantastic clinicians, public health people, regular citizens, AIDS and how HIV has been taken care of in the District of Columbia, there's a lot of good news. We have one of the highest testing of people with HIV. The problem is that once people test positive, only 1 out of 5 gets to undetectable viral load, because there are many barriers to staying in care. And what are they? We talked about poverty. If you have substance abuse, if you have mental health issues, domestic violence, you're working 3 jobs and can't get the 3 buses to get to where you need to go, the person who checks you in is rude, and you say, I'm not going to be bothered. There are so many barriers.
So you say that 1 out of 5, so 20% of those that are now detected with AIDS, I mean, because this is part of a good news story, a bit, that 20% now are treated in a way that that AIDS is no longer detectable.
The virus.
The virus
is not detectable. That's right. The good news part is that we test a lot of people. The bad news part is not everybody's at undetectable viral load.
Yeah.
And I should give a shout out to Whitman Walker, because their undetectable viral load of the people that they take care of is higher than the NIH. Something like 75% of their people.
At Whitman Walker.
That's what holistic, excellent care with committed people looks like.
So in other words, are you saying 75% of those that go through Whitman
Walker
go through Whitman Walker,
who are HIV positive,
yes,
have undetectable viral load? Because not only do they take care of them in terms of their medical problems, they also have substance abuse, mental health clinics, dental clinics. I should tell you, I'm on the board of Whitman Walker. I don't get any money or anything like that. But it is that holistic way of treating people that really makes a difference.
Seems as that would be a model for the nation, whatever it is that Whitman Walker is doing.
They're doing great work. But the other good news part of it is that committed physicians created a consortium, an HIV consortium of about 156 people. All the AIDS doctors in D.C. got together so that they can say, okay, what can we do collectively? How can we research this problem? How can we make sure that treatment is getting to the people that we want? So they've developed an infrastructure which has worked well, where they share information. Are we as effective as we could be? Absolutely not. But at least there's the infrastructure has been built. The problem in the District of Columbia is you've got a lot of hospitals, but we don't communicate with each other. We don't use the same electronic medical record. So if an individual goes to, let's say, Washington Hospital Center with a problem with HIV and is hospitalized, and a week later goes to GW or Howard, there's no way of sharing that information. Okay. Furthermore, hospital is just a tip of an iceberg of an overall person's health, a hospitalization.
Right.
So when they get to the hospital, it means that usually something has failed, right? Because if they had primary care, if they had clinics, if they had food, if they had all these other things that make part of a healthy lifestyle, maybe we could have forestalled them getting into the hospital. So there are a lot of other models of good work that's being done, not just in D.C., but in other parts of the country. So there's this guy up in Camden, Dr. Brenner, and he's created something called the Hot Spotters Program.
Camden, New Jersey.
Camden, New Jersey. And he is an emergency medicine doctor, and he found out that, gosh, there are a lot of people, the same people that keep coming out in and out of the emergency department. What's that all about? So what did he do? He traced back where they were coming from, and they found out that these people that were the high utilizers were coming from 2 buildings in the projects. And they were using something like 30-40% of the healthcare costs, because you don't get anybody's attention until you talk about costs and reducing them, let alone the human costs and the price that people pay. So what did he do? He, along with a nurse practitioner, along with a nurse and a community health worker, started to go to those individuals and say, hey, how can we prevent you? What can we do to take care of you? Whether it's getting an air conditioner, whether it's taking care of your alcohol or drug abuse or whatever the issues were. And he was able to show that he could reduce the number of people going to the hospital, but more importantly, give people their lives back. So we at the RODHAM Institute, we've been fortunate to be selected, one of 6 organizations in the country that has been selected to be trained by the Camden Group Hotspotters so that we can learn from them. As I say, there's a lot of good work that's happening in the city and around the country, but we need to, you know what I say, Rock?
Tell me.
Bad people have given human beings a bad rap. It's time that good people stand up.
Hallelujah.
And take humanity back.
Hallelujah. Let me ask you before we wrap up here. You look around, you drive around the city, and you see the preponderance of obesity. Now, it's interesting when you talk about how that might relate to poverty. Because people think, well, gee whiz, if you're poor, you must not eat so much. But obesity, it seems to be much more prevalent in sections of the city that are the poorest.
And indeed, when you look at the maps, and if we use red as a color where there's really high obesity in wards 5, 6, 7, and 8, some areas are more than 50%. And we know that that's tied with diabetes, stroke, heart disease, cancer, Plus, what's happened to people who are obese in this country, it's almost like they're re-victimized again, because there's the war on obesity, the war on drugs, and when you have those problems, people feel like you're waging war against them. There's actually been studies showing that obese people get discriminated against by physicians in the medical system. So what has been done, and what are some of the creative programs that have been put in place that are working right now, but we want to expand them? So let me tell you about Wholesome Wave. Wholesome Wave was created by 2 fourth-generation farmers. One of them, Michelle Nishin, the other one, Gus Schumacher. Gus was an Undersecretary of Agriculture under Clinton. And Michelle had kind of had a crisis in conscience. He was a big restaurateur, very successful chef. And he said, my soul is not being fulfilled. So he began to look at how he could be part of the solution and not contributing to the problem of diabetes, obesity. So they founded this organization called Wholesome Wave, where they convinced the government for people who have food stamp benefits, SNAP, to give them double points for fruits and vegetables. And not only that, they hook them up with farmers through farmers markets. So here in the city of D.C., there are lots of farmers markets, and if you get a prescription from a clinician, you can get double points for fruits and vegetables. So guess what they found? A reduction in your body mass index with people who use those double points programs.
Yeah.
And not only that, it's a work program for farmers, 25% increase in revenue. So the Tea Party-backed governor of South Carolina gave $2 million subsidy to grow that program.
Yeah.
DC Greens, fantastic work with schools to have healthy eating, as well as school gardens. Okay, Food and Friends, they've a nonprofit organization since 1985, initially founded to deliver meals for people with HIV/AIDS. They've now expanded to people who are in hospice or who have cancer. They deliver for people who need them, 3 meals a day, 6 days a week. And let me tell you, I've eaten there. The food is fantastic.
Wow.
12,000 people volunteer at that organization.
Yeah.
There are good people. So it's about bringing these good people together so that we can see, oh, you know what? This area in this ward is not being covered. Or you know what? We can do this with you to grow our programs. So a lot of wonderful work. Unity Healthcare doing a lot of great work. But we're not going to be able to keep that good work going if we don't institutionalize it.
Yes, yes.
And part of institutionalizing it, this is where the academic centers come in. We need to begin to weave public health education into how we train our clinicians.
Yes.
And that's where the RODHAM Institute is going to step in.
And again, such a noble role. Let me ask you, if you look at that crystal ball, do you continue as a practitioner of medicine, or is it any possibility that you won't have time for that? I know who I am, and I'm a doctor first and foremost. For me to be able to speak about health issues, it's important that I take care of patients, because that's how I keep it real, and that's how I know what the issues are. Yeah.
And I get a lot more than I give when I take care of patients.
You know, I've been a proponent since I was a little league coach, really when I was like in college, that if you want to learn something, try to teach it. You know?
Yeah.
So you're going to keep on learning.
Oh, for sure.
By teaching.
And I love my patients.
Yes.
Are you kidding?
Yes,
Those are my peeps. How am I going to let them down? No.
And you are our peep. Thank you so very much for being on the Rock Newman Show.
My pleasure.
There's so much more in healthcare that we could talk about. And I'll tell you something, we'd love to have you back on again.
It would be my pleasure, Rock. Thank you for inviting me.
And the next segment coming up, the wonderful youth from the Southeast Tennis and Learning Center who performed just this week at the White House, and now they're going to perform for you here in the Langston Hughes Room at Busboys and Poets on the Rock Newman Show. Be back after these messages.
Test. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Yep. All right.
My baby drives a pro handcuff.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a pro handcuff.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Folks, we're back. We're wrapping up this Saturday, August the 31st, with a very special presentation. It is a presentation that was worthy of performing at the White House just this week. It is a group of youth from the Southeast Tennis and Learning Center. The executive director, the founder, the visionary for the Southeast Tennis and Learning Center is former First Lady Cora Masters Berry. They put on a stellar performance at the White House this week. I want to suggest to you that those of you watching, if you've got a mother or a grandmother, grandfather, father, great-grandfather, and also little children in the house, tell them to come to how you're watching this live streaming right now, whether it's on your phone, whether it is on the computer, if you've got it hooked up to the TV, however it might be, you don't want to miss this performance. One, again, that was worthy of a White House appearance this week. Cora Masters Berry, former First Lady and now visionary and director of the Southeast Tennis and Learning Center, thank you so much and for coming here and for bringing these talented children to the Rock Newman Show.
Well, thank you for inviting us, but I do have to let the public know this was not on our schedule. Rock came to a practice, and then his wheels started rolling, and he said, well, I have to have you on the show. And Barack Obama said, but Saturday is my me time.
That's what he said. He said, you mean you're going to take away my me time? I said, yes, sir, Mr. President.
Yeah. But we're glad to be here.
Well, thank you so much. If you would, for the listening audience out there who might not be aware of the Southeast Tennis and Learning Center, if you might give us perspective as to what went into your putting that together, establishing it, and what you hope to accomplish, and what all you're doing in that Southeast Washington, D.C. community. Our previous guest referred several times to south of the river, east of the river. And east of the river, generally speaking, is thought of as an area of lower socioeconomic existence, the ghetto, if you will, sometimes. Southeast Tennis and Learning Center. Tell us about it.
I think somewhere in the Bible it said, what good comes out of Damascus? Or where is it? Jerusalem? Wherever it was. What good comes out of Southeast? Fabulous stuff. Our kids are fabulous. I started an organization called the Recreation Wish List Committee with the goal of providing recreation and educational opportunities around the city. Make a long story short, we did basketball courts, and to make close to your heart, baseball, diamonds, and all of that. And one day I just rode down the street and saw this blight of land where it was clear that it used to be a tennis court, and there was a lot of, I'd say, illegal activities going on. And make another long story short, I did a little informal, what I would call marketing survey, and found out that that was a tennis court, and just took the position, if you build it, they will come. So we built 6 tennis courts along with Dr. Arnold McKnight, who is the father of the young man who's going to come later on, and we'll talk about that more. And then I found out when the kids were playing tennis, it just wasn't enough. Sports are not enough for kids out of that community. So we came up with the idea. It was a divine revelation, really, to build a building. But nothing as grand and as wonderful as what we have. I really actually, and I'm always honest about it, had trailers in my mind, a couple of stand-alone trailers where I could get my friends to come and volunteer and tutor, and God had a bigger plan. So we built the Southeast Tennis and Learning Center with the thought of giving these kids education and tennis, and when that education, not traditional. Of course we tutor, and of course we help them with their homework, but we also give them cultural activities. We travel with them. They've been able to be at the Egyptian embassy for a fundraiser, which was really awesome, and they need to know who they are and where they came from. So me being the political scientist of 20-something years and specializing in black politics, and being a mother of 2 girls who understand a part of the movement, albeit it wasn't the civil rights movement, it was the Black Power movement in the interest of, transparency. I was with Stoker Carmichael, but I was still, getting my revelation together. And so we started trying to show them eyes on the prize. I mean, they had the slack jaw, glazed look. I said, this isn't working. Yeah. I want them to know their history and own their history. So we did a little play in the library, and gave everybody a part of a civil rights icon. And it was so successful that the next year we kind of took it to a big room we called the round room, and then that was so successful. And to make a long story short, now we've been getting ready to appear at our 4th performance at the Kennedy Center. And we get about 1,000 people who come to the Southeast Tennis and Learning Center every year to see these kids, and then we take them to the Kennedy Center and the White House. And we were out on the mall for the 50th anniversary. And that's because people not only are entertained, but they are informed. I mean, I learn a lot about our history every year from these kids. And I'm very proud of them, because when they're in a larger group, like Johnetta Cole had them somewhere, and they ask questions that these kids know. Yeah. And so they own it now. Not only do they own who they are, but they know everybody that's being done. So it's really about education and informing through the arts.
Again, Dr. Bayoumi, who was here earlier, we talked about learning things. One of the best ways to learn something is to try to teach it. Right. So you tried to teach these kids. Have you learned anything from this young man right here?
Well, this young man is amazing. He's about to do the performance of Barack Obama, and he does it quite well. But before I even knew him, he came to the center, and we have a Barack Obama, another one young guy named Imani Haskell, who's been doing it for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
And he walked up to me out of clear and said, I can be better Barack Obama than him. I know more about him. I studied him. I want to be Barack Obama. So looking at him, and that was like 2 years ago, so this is his first Barack Obama rendition. So he asked me the other day, am I at the top? I said, you're getting there.
So young man, before you become, in a few moments, Barack Obama, what's your name that your mom and daddy gave you?
My name is Kevin Akers. I go to Achievement Preparatory Academy. I'm in the 7th grade, and I am 10 years old.
Really?
Yes.
All right, and I just asked you your name. You just gave me all that information. I appreciate it very much. How you doing today? Welcome to the Rock Newman Show.
I'm doing quite fine today, and I am proud to be on a show that's live streaming worldwide on the radio and everything.
Okay, and when I told him that it's live streaming and his friends and family and people all around can say it, he said, yes, I'm about to be famous. So you got some desires to be famous, huh?
Yes, I want to be the next President Barack Obama, and I hope to be one of the greats as we know today, such as Dr. Martin Luther King. And my main dream is to become somebody that black people can look by and say, hey, I could be like him. He stepped out of the crew. He stepped out of the popularity. He stepped all of that. I want to be one of those people who said, I could be like him.
So you seriously want to be a role model?
Yes.
Okay. And so your character, when you performed at the White House, was the president. Man, that's a whole lot of pressure.
It wasn't that much pressure. It was pressure, but I understood it because when I said my words and I practiced it, I realized that I had to become Barack Obama. I couldn't just memorize the words. He memorized the word. He did a good job. I want people to think that I actually am President Barack Obama. It doesn't matter how I don't look like him. It matters how I act like him.
Man, you take my breath away.
Don't ask him no.
All right, now, okay. So you went to the White House. You were the man playing the band in the White House. Come on, Barack Obama. Let me, folks, around the world, let me introduce to you President of the United States of America,
that camera,
Barack Obama. He got you. He's got you. Just do your thing.
Dr. King would be the first to remind us that this memorial is not for him alone. The movement of which he was a part depended on an entire generation of leaders. Many are here today for their dedication and for their service and their sacrifice. We owe them our everlasting gratitude. Some giants of the civil rights movement, such as Rosa Parks, Dr. Dorothy Height, Benjamin Hooks, and Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, have been taken from us these past few years. This monument attests to their strength and their courage, and while we miss them dearly, we know they rest in a better place. And finally, there are the multitudes of men and women whose names never appear in the history books. Those who marched and those who sang, those who sat in and those who stood firm, those who organized and those who mobilized, to those men and women who through countless acts of quiet heroism have brought changes few thought were even possible. By the thousands, said Dr. King, faceless, anonymous, relentless young people, black and white, have taken our whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the formulation of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. To those men and women, to those foot soldiers for justice, know that the MLK Monument is yours as well. The Civil Rights Movement gave birth to so many great freedom fighters, such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his wife Coretta Scott King, Roy Wilkins, A. Philip Randolph, John Lewis, James Farmer, and Bayard Rustin, who I am proud to honor posthumously with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And now, we come to commemorate the the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where Dr. King delivered his I Have a Dream speech. History continues as I stand on the shoulders of these great leaders. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Barack Hussein Obama. Great job, great job. You said you were 10 years old and you're in the 7th grade? How do you get to be in the 7th grade and just 10 years old? I was only in the 5th grade when I was 10.
Well, in 1st grade, they had me skip up a grade. Not that I wanted to, but they had me skip up a grade. That's why I'm in 7th grade.
So you got skipped on ahead. So you're 10 years old, you're in the 7th grade.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, you got a girlfriend?
I've had a couple.
You had a couple? All right, player. So glad to have you, Barack Obama. Thank you very much.
It's nice to be here.
Okay, continue in your presidency. Continue in your presidency, and please try to help the world to be a better place.
Oh, trust me, I will.
Okay. All right. Now, the way we do this on this live streaming television show, we're going to move him out. And he just mentioned John Lewis. We're going to bring John Lewis in. John Lewis, who spoke at the March on Washington 50 years ago this week. There was actually some controversy, in case you guys don't know it, because SNCC had some stuff written into John Lewis's speech, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They absolutely were more radical than the older leaders. And John Lewis was the youngest speaker that day. He was 23 years old. One of the cardinals here in the Catholic Church who gave prayer that day saw the speech and had some concerns and actually said that threatened to pull out. So the speech was tailored a bit. Part of what was objectionable in the speech was that John Lewis was to say that if our demands aren't met, we're gonna march through the South like Sherman did, and you all know what that meant. Well, that was changed a bit. John Lewis was introduced. Corps Masters Barry, you want to share a little bit about this gentleman right here before John Lewis starts to speak?
I will in just a second, but I have to, as a political scientist and as a person who believes that history shouldn't be rewritten, and neither should it be omitted. And that's another way of rewriting history. The first founding president of the SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, was Marion Barry.
Somebody named Marion S. Barry.
Absolutely.
From Itabena, Mississippi.
Absolutely. He had working on his PhD in chemistry and left it to join the movement. And after him was Stokely Carmichael.
Yes.
And then John Lewis.
Yes.
So John Lewis's radicalism was borrowed from the original ones. So I just want to know that he's the one they put out front, and he deserves that, but let's not forget the ones that came before him.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, and about this gentleman right here.
Well, this is, in the interest of nepotism, my cousin.
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with that, because he's a genius and he's very smart. And his name is Rajan Rankin, and he's also a star tennis player. Just went up and came 2nd place in Tennis Olympics in New York and Flushing Meadows. He is on his way to Dale Junior High School, and he is 10 years old.
Rajan, welcome to the Rock Newman Show. So tell me, when you were preparing for your character, what did you find most interesting about John Lewis?
Well, I found out that he was a very smart guy. He was also the youngest speaker at the March on Washington, which I thought was very cool because he dedicated what he wanted to do most to the March on Washington.
Okay. So I'll tell you what, without any further ado, August the 28th, 1963, let's bring up the youngest speaker to speak that day, John Lewis.
I never imagined my life being intertwined with those great leaders who I admired, believed in, and was mentored by as I followed in their footsteps. I am Congressman John Lewis, and I've come a long way starting my journey as a student, inspired by the activism, surrounding the Montgomery bus boycott, and the words of Dr. King, which I heard on radio broadcasts. I organized sit-in demonstrations at segregated lunch counters in Nashville while attending Fisk University in 1961. I volunteered to participate in the Freedom Rides, first organized by Bayard Rustin, which challenged segregation at interstate bus terminals across the South. Yes, I've been beaten and arrested, but it prepared me and encouraged me to continue the fight for freedom, and that helped form the SNCC, SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, where I was named chairman. At the age of 23, it was my honor to be an architect of and keynote speaker at the historic March on Washington in 1963. And there wasn't just male political leaders rallying behind the march. There were some very important women there that contributed to that historical day. And I still miss Dr. Dorothy Height. She stood tall among the men, fighting for the rights of women and families, urging us to forge a united civil rights movement. And she was known to diplomatically counsel every president in the White House, starting from Eisenhower to President Barack Obama.
John Lewis, thank you very much for appearing on the Rock Newman Show. And you spoke about Dr. Dorothy Height, a true giant amongst all people, not just African-American people, but a true giant amongst all people. If you don't mind, we'd like to have you to step back and have Dorothy Height, very involved in the March on Washington, very involved in the Million Man March, and very involved in every cause that meant something to this world. Dr. Dorothy Height, thank you so much for joining us here at the Rock Newman Show.
Before she can I say a few things?
Yes, you can.
Yes, Dr. Height was at the March on Washington, but I also want to say that we talked about it often, and she fought diligently to have a woman speak, not necessarily her. And the men said, the organizations that we represent have women. That's enough. They get their voice through us. So it was just a miracle that she was on that stand that day.
Yeah, and I know that you, Cora, became very, very good friends with Dr. Height. What was it that prompted her to start appearing in public with that signature, those grand hats of hers?
You know, I asked her where was the turning point in that, and she said she's been doing it for the last 30 years. And, you know, she said, I've always worn hats because ladies wear hats and gloves.
All right.
But she got like off the chain, over the top. Her hats were like, you know, they're getting ready to do a whole museum of them.
Of just her hat.
Just her hat.
Right.
And this actually is her hat. She gave us this hat. Janice, our costume designer and the grandmother of John Lewis, did a little bling up here. But this is Dorothy's actual hat. And she asked me one day, I have not seen my hat. You asked me to loan you a hat. I said, oh, well, she says, darling, do you know the definition of loan? So, she had a great sense of humor.
Yes. Tell me, you love Dorothy Height?
Yes, because she was a great woman, and because if it wasn't for those people in the march, then we wouldn't be able to do the things that we are able to do now.
So you love Dorothy Height?
Yes.
Okay, and you are Dorothy Height, so you should be loving yourself. Ladies and gentlemen.
Her name.
Your name.
My name is Raina Carroll.
Say it again. Raina
Carroll.
I love that name. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you, again, from August 28th, 1963, somewhere around 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Washington, D.C., in front of the Lincoln Memorial, Dr. Dorothy Height.
I stood on the platform only a few feet from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as he delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech on August 28, 1963. I am proud to be one of the few women who participated at the highest levels of the civil rights movement, and one of the only women who helped organize this historic event. I was inspired by Mary McLeod Bethune not only to be concerned, but to use whatever talent I had to be of service in the community. I became the national president of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority in 1947 and the president of the National Council of Negro Women in 1957. I was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Bill Clinton in 1998 and the Congressional Medal of Honor by President George Bush in 2004 on my 92nd birthday. Yes, I am grateful I lived long enough to witness the first African-American president, Barack Obama. I wanted to make sure he was working hard, so I visited the White House 21 times after he took office and before I died at the age of 98 in April 2010. I didn't witness the monument to our great king, but I will be there in spirit as you commemorate the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. I hope you realize there's still more work to do. So what are you waiting for? Get to work. A woman's work is never done.
A woman's work is never done. A man's work also is never done. We're going to take a break and come back with more from the youth of the Southeast Tennyson Learning Center on the Rock Newman Show at Busboys and Poets.
This is Leprechaun Tim Pohanka from Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai. It's hard to be down on your luck when you're Virginia's first choice for new Nissan and Hyundais, but I need to sell 60 cars this week. Right now, I'll pay you big bucks for your good luck. Bring down any good luck charm you've got, and based on the sale price of the car you choose, I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car this week. Today, your lucky penny is worth plenty, up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car you want. Stop moping and hoping you'll get approved. With my For the People credit approval process, the banks are looking to get lucky and lend to you, even if you've been turned down before. Bring me any good luck charm and I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car today. Hurry, once I get rid of 60 cars, the luck runs out. All offers require bank approval, so call us at 1-800-POHANKA, visit Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai on Route 1 in Fredericksburg, or better yet, log on to TimPohankaForThePeople.com. And when we make a deal, I promise it'll be your lucky day. I'm Tim Pohanka, and I'm a leprechaun for the people.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Welcome back, folks, to our last segment here. We are putting the finishing touches on this week's remembrance of the March on Washington 50 years ago. We're doing so with the fabulous youth from the Southeast Tennyson Learning Center here in Washington, D.C., who performed this week at the White House. We just saw earlier, you saw John Lewis, you saw President Barack Obama, you saw Dorothy Height. The person, probably the most underappreciated person involved in the march, was Bayard Rustin. And there was a lot of reason why that was the case. One, 50 years ago, Bayard Rustin lived his life as an openly gay man. Bayard Rustin easily could be termed, characterized as the backbone of the March on Washington. He was the person, he was the organizer that all roads led to Bayard Rustin. Everything that happened that day, Bayard Rustin, his name is often pronounced Bayard Rustin because that's how it's spelled, but he called himself Bayard Rustin. He was the architect of the March on Washington in 1963. A fabulous, fabulous organizer. Tell us, Ms. Berry, if you will, a little bit about this gentleman that's about to play Bayard Rustin.
I just want to piggyback here. He was the architect, and it was A. Philip Randolph who brought him back to run the march because it was falling apart.
Yes.
So he's going to do this, and he's doing it out of order because people think the last voice they heard was Martin Luther King's. It was not. It was Bayard Rustin giving instructions to the people about what was going to happen next. But because we want to end with King, but what he's about to do is exactly what Bayard said, except he edited it down because he didn't want to make it too long. So This is Dre Falk. He is, how old are you, Dre?
11.
11, and you go to
Achievement
Preparatory. He's been with us, well, how many years? 7 years?
About 4.
4 years. He's been Michael Jackson. He's been James Brown. He's been Marion Barry. Now I'd like to introduce you to Bayard Rustin.
Bayard Rustin, 1963, folks, and I would like you around the world to meet the gentleman most responsible for the organization of the 1963 March on Washington, Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin, you have the floor.
Friends, listen to me. I am Bayard Rustin, director of the march. At 5 o'clock today, the leaders whom you have heard will go to President Kennedy to carry the demands of this revolution. It is now time for you to act. I will read each demand, and you will respond to it, so that when Roy Wilkinson, Dr. King, and the other 8 leaders go, they are carrying with them the demands which have been given your approval to. Because we demand our rights.
That's it.
That is fantastic, Bayard Rustin. Now, folks, you need to understand, again, the sequence of the march. Bayard Rustin closed out the march. And he did so because he was the one who had the demands. He read off each of the demands that came from the organization and came from the march. Those individuals, Roy Wilkins, A. Philip Randolph, Martin Luther King, they eventually went to see
Whitney
Young to see John F. Kennedy. You know, John F. Kennedy was sitting in the White House at that point. He actually had not met Martin Luther King. And when he said to one of the writers there, or one of the other White House officials, man, he's really something. You know, keep in mind that there had been a protracted effort to quash the march, that the Kennedy administration, as much as they have been characterized and seen as friends and supporters of the civil rights movement, they didn't want that march to happen. And understand that the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, as Jesse Jackson talked about from this seat last week, was on high alert. There are all of these people, majority of them black, but certainly from all stripes, coming in, but thought to be perhaps radical, and some 250,000 100,000 people converging on the nation's capital, the military was on high alert. There was someone under the podium that if too much radical conversation had taken place, they were going to play Mahalia Jackson's music. There were all kinds of precautions taken by the Kennedy administration at the time as a prevention for what they thought might have been chaos and violence. And here you have a march that is coming together of was truly a peaceful revolution.
And integrated, very integrated.
And an integrated revolution. And of course, it went on without incidents. But it is another example of how critical it is for the people to lead. Very, very, very seldom. I mean, when you look at the dynamics of that march, and you look at who the leaders were, and again, the reputation has been burnished in history that the Kennedy clan was so extraordinarily supportive of civil rights. But understand that their politics at that time, it absolutely was trying to prevent the very things that helped to bring about such changes that were needed. So again, it's such a word to the wise that the people must lead. Now, what we're going to do is Bayard Rustin, who actually finished up, and he talked about the next speaker going to see Kennedy. And Kennedy talked about how impressed he was with the next speaker. And of course, that was Martin Luther King. So, Mr. Rustin, if you don't mind, if you would turn the headsets over, we're going to bring Dr. King to the table. Now, as an advisory to those of you looking around the world who will be listening later on tonight, let me just give a little information about this gentleman here. I know a little something about him personally. He was born on February the 24th, which is my birthday also. He is the son of the gentleman who was the co-founder and certainly highly beloved tennis instructor at the Southeast Tennis and Learning Center, Dr. Arnold W. McKnight. Dr. Arnold W. McKnight happens to be the person that recruited me to Howard University and provided me with a good scholarship and allowed me to get an education. His wife and this gentleman's mother, Mrs. McKnight, Mrs. Janine McKnight, is in the audience with us here today. And certainly, as you will see when the moment arises, they've done a fantastic job of rearing a fantastic son. Now, look at this face, look at it close, a little bit made up as Dr. Martin Luther King, because you will see this face again. You remember how that Richard Pryor joke said, you will see the turkey again. You will see this face again, because you will see him at Center Court in Wimbledon. He will be, in the not so distant future, the #1 tennis player in the world.
Absolutely.
The #1 tennis, you're looking at a future #1 tennis player in the world. His name is also Woodrow McKnight. Ms. Barry, would you share a little bit about this gentleman?
Well, you know, Dr. Arnold McKnight, better known as Mac, and I, opened the center together. There was about a month where there was nobody in the building but he and I. He was on one side of the building, I was on the other one. We were sitting on cinder blocks trying to make it happen. He had recently had a young son that started coming to the tennis center, playing tennis. I don't know, were you walking?
We probably was in diapers.
Right. And he had a tennis racket on his hand, and he would be in center court, what we call the show court, and I would walk back and forth, and finally Mac, who was very dramatic, said, Miss B, you're not looking, you haven't paid attention to Woody. I said, when are you going to start hitting the ball inside, Mac? So he's been playing all of his life. When his father, unfortunately, prematurely left us, he stopped playing for 4 years. So he's really back about 1.5 years. And in doing that time, he has risen in the ranks, And he's special. I'm not saying this. I see hundreds of kids, thousands of kids since the center opened in 2001.
Sure.
He has everything it takes. And he is going to be on center court. And we're going to turn over the tape to them. That at, I think, 6 years old, he says, I'm going to be the #1 tennis player. I'm going to be like Arthur Ashe and Andre Agassi. I'm going to be they're going to be playing that one day. Before he goes on the court, that little tape is going to be playing. We're saving it for him.
All right.
So this is
Do let me say to our technical staff and production team, I'm going to make this introduction, and, you know, I've never been accused, one, of not wanting to have the last word. However, this is one of those times when I'm going to let the moment speak for itself. Once I introduce Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you won't hear me anymore until next week. Without any further ado, I introduce to you Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
I'm happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied. As long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied. As long as a Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied. As long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama, go back to South Carolina, go back to Georgia, go back to Louisiana, go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with a new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Yes. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Yes. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands in singing the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Thank you.